Prabhupada ki jai.
Sasutra Swami ki jai.
Tasmat. Therefore. Sarveshu. To all. Bhuteshu. Living entities. Dayam. Mercy. Kuruta. Show. Sohridam. Friendliness. Bhavam. The attitude. Asuram. Of the demons. Who separate friends and enemies. Unmucha. Giving up. Yaya. By which. Tushyati. Is satisfied. Adhok Sajaha. The Supreme Lord. Who is beyond the perception of the senses. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demoniac nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. Purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yashashmi tatvata. One can understand the Supreme Personality of God as He is only by devotional service. Prahlad Maharaj ultimately instructed his class friends, the sons of the demons, to accept the process of devotional service by preaching the science of Krishna consciousness to everyone. Preaching is the best service to the Lord. The Lord will immediately be extremely satisfied with one who engaged in this service of preaching Krishna consciousness. This is confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita 18:69. Nacha tasman manushyeshu Christian me priyakritamaha. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. If one sincerely tries his best to spread Krishna consciousness by preaching the glories of the Lord and His supremacy, even if he is imperfectly educated, he becomes the dearmost servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is bhakti. As one performs this service for humanity without discrimination between friends and enemies, the Lord becomes satisfied, and the mission of one's life is fulfilled. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised everyone to become a guru devotee and preach Krishna consciousness. Yare deka, tare kaha, Krishna Upadesh. That is the easiest way to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By such preaching, the preacher becomes satisfied, and those to whom he preaches are also satisfied. This is the process of bringing peace and tranquility to the entire world. Bhuktaram jagita prasam sarvalokam maheshwaram sukridam sarvabhutanam yatvamam shanti mulichati. One is expected to understand these three formulas of knowledge concerning the Supreme Lord: that He is the Supreme Enjoyer, that He is the proprietor of everything, and that He is the best well-wisher and friend of everyone. A preacher should personally understand these truths and preach them to everyone. Then there will be peace and tranquility all over the world. The word sohridam, friendliness, is very significant in this verse. People are generally ignorant of Krishna consciousness, and therefore to become their best well-wisher, one should teach them about Krishna consciousness without discrimination. Since the Supreme Lord Vishnu is situated in the core of everyone's heart, every body is a temple of Vishnu. One should not misuse this understanding as an excuse for such words as Daridra Narayana. If Narayana lives in the house of a Daridra, a poor man, this does not mean that Narayana becomes poor. He lives everywhere, in the houses of the poor and those of the rich, but in all circumstances he remains Narayana. To think that he has become either poor or rich is a material calculation. He is always Sarashvarya Purna, full of six opulences in all circumstances. Tasmat Sarveshu Bhutyeshu Ayam Kurutta Sauhridam Bhava Masuram Unmuchya Riyat Ushati Adhoksaja. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demoniac nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. So I'm sure everyone is here has heard the formula that religion without philosophy is sentiment, or even fanaticism. And conversely, philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So actually the perfect blend of the two, religion and philosophy, is what Srila Prabhupada is stressing here in his purport. Preaching of Krishna consciousness. Because his preaching, it is the dharma. Dharma means religion. Actually, it is the best dharma, as we've heard. Na cha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritam. Lord Krishna says that there is no one who can be more dear to him than the preacher. So it is the best religion. It is the religion that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has personally shown for this age, the Yuga Dharma. And it is also philosophy, because Krishna, in the previous verse to this one just cited, 1868, he says, in speaking about preaching, Ya idam paramam guhyam. So he describes this preaching, this presentation, to be the presentation of paramam guhyam, the most confidential knowledge. And in 9th chapter, the Lord says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. This knowledge is Raja Vidya, king of education, and Raja Guhyam, again the same point, the most confidential knowledge. This is Krishna's term for this philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Yaidam paramam guhyam mad bhakteshu abhidhashati. The Lord says, the one who presents this most confidential knowledge, this philosophy, before the devotees, then bhakti mayi param kritva, he is rendering the best devotional service. Bhakti mayi param kritva. So kritva means activity, and param means the best. So there's no better service, no better activity than this. And mame vaishisi ashamsaya. The conclusion is, that person who preaches this confidential knowledge will surely come back to me. Mame vaishashi. He will attain me, ashamsaya, without any doubt. So everyone should therefore become eager to preach Krishna consciousness. Now preaching paramam guhyam, it is confidential knowledge. It is not something you you'll be able to find in the newspaper, in the kiosk. It is not something you'll find being gossiped on the street corner by fools and rascals. It is called guhya because it must be received from the right source. And that means from Krishna's bona fide representative. There is a disciplic succession which protects this knowledge. Unless this knowledge is handed down the disciplic succession, then it's just not there. You see, just like the holy name of Krishna. So this holy name, Krishna, 2 syllables, very simple. And it is stated, as you know, that within the name of Krishna, within the Mahamantra, iti shodashakam namnam kali kalmasha nashanam nata paratparopayo sarvavedeshu drishyati. This holy name is so powerful because it, just by vibrating it, one destroys all the inauspicious influences of the age of Kali. And within these iti shodashakam namnam, these 16 syllables of this holy name of the Hare Krishna mantra, sarvavedeshu drishyati, all the knowledge of the Vedas is compacted. So this is the holy name of Krishna, or the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But if it is not received from the proper source, then these syllables, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
They just become empty. Empty material sound vibration. For instance, if a Mayavadi speculator posing as a guru, if he introduces the chanting of Hare Krishna among his followers, his hearers, it will have no effect. Well, it will have some effect, but not the desired effect. Not the effect desired by the devotees. Milk, as you may know, that statement. Milk touched by the lips of a serpent has a poisonous effect. So, yes, this paramam guyam, this most confidential knowledge, must be received from the disciplic succession. And then one becomes empowered by this reception. One becomes immediately empowered to actually, it's not only a question of just being empowered, that is the order. Everyone should understand that by coming into this Krishna consciousness movement and receiving initiation and then hearing from the spiritual master this knowledge, that with this process of hearing comes the order. You must take this knowledge you received out and give it to others. Otherwise, it is very difficult for this to take root in the heart, to actually become realized knowledge. Jnanam vijnanam. There is jnanam, the knowledge, and there is vijnanam, realized knowledge. So the realized knowledge becomes crystallized in the heart when we go forth and preach. Actually, it is the test of this knowledge. Just like here, it is stated that the demons, Bhagavad writes in the word for word translation, asuram, of the demons who separate friends and enemies. So the demons are in duality. All living entities, Krishna says, that all living entities are born into duality. Dvanva mohena bharata. Icha dvesha shamuttena dvanva mohena bharata. All living entities who appear in this world in material bodies, dvanva mohena, they are bewildered by duality. And that duality, Krishna explains, icha dvesha. Icha means desire for sense pleasure. And dvesha means enviousness or hatred. So, on the basis of sense pleasure, my sense gratification, for instance, my seeing, let's just take the example of the eyes, seeing. So, going out in the world, I see things which either please me, according to my mental conception, like persons, for instance. I see a nice young girl, and according to my mental conception, the form of this young girl I find pleasing. So then I want to be her friend. I become interested in knowing her. I haven't met her before, but somehow This is the materialistic mentality. Then I start to think, oh, this is a nice girl. I should talk to her. I should get her attention. And we should become friends. And conversely, by my seeing, I also see someone that I don't like. For instance, another young man who's trying to get attention of this girl. And this person I feel dvesha for. Dvesha means enviousness, hatred. I don't like this person. So this is the duality. And Lord Krishna says everyone is born in this duality. And here, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that the demons in particular, they cultivate. This is their so-called civilization is based on this principle. On friends and enemies. And because they have no spiritual vision, they see only the body. So, this is material consciousness, in other words. Dvandva mohina bharata. This is Lord Krishna's statement. What is material consciousness? Dvandva, duality. That's what it is. And someone who's doing this, making friends, enemies on the basis of sense gratification, he's a materialist. So this spiritual knowledge, this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, is meant to defeat materialism. So the first and foremost materialist that we have to defeat is the one up here. We ourselves have a materialistic mind. And that means we have to defeat our duality. And how do we do that? You just go out and preach. And you don't care. You see, when one goes out and preaches, one sees the uselessness of this dualistic conception immediately. Because one will see that very often that the pretty young girls have no interest in Krishna consciousness. So you go to them and you think, oh, she's nice. She looks very noble and aristocratic and intelligent. She has such a clear, innocent-looking face. She must be very pious. And then you try to tell her about Krishna consciousness. She says, get out of here, leave away, get out, get away from me. It's nonsense. And then you see someone else who, from materialistic vision, may not look so attractive, not look so intelligent, but actually is very interested. And gives you all his attention and wants to take the book and wants to come to the temple. So you see immediately that the spirit soul is different from the body. The body is a covering and the body is bewildering. Body bewilders that person and bewilders us. It's just a vehicle of bewilderment. So by this preaching, then we have to overcome our own attachments and aversions, first of all, in order to preach, in order to do this. You must overcome your own attachments and aversions. And this causes that spiritual knowledge to actually become concrete, crystallized in the heart. This is realization. Realization. You have to, in order to preach, put aside your own concerns for sense gratification and also mental speculation. If one still remains involved in either of these two things, sense gratification or mental speculation, he cannot preach. So, this preaching is the real dharma, the real religion, and the real philosophy, the real combination of the two. And when preaching is not there, then, just as we see here in, let's take this country, Sweden. So in Sweden, there's a very strong, as everywhere, in any country, there's a strong national conception. The people have a particular sense of what they are, sense of identity, the Swedish identity. And where does this come from? How is it that people think, I am Swedish and a Swedish person, these are the values of Sweden, and I should represent these values, I should be very liberal, and, not make, actually they're also trying in a way to not make discrimination But by doing that, they make discrimination. Anyway. So there's this particular Swedish mentality. Where does it come from? So when you look in history, it is actually coming out of what Prabhupada used to call churchianity. This nationalism, whether it's in Sweden or anywhere else, is a result of national churches and churchianity, the conception of religion as being a church. And churchianity is, of course, Christianity, but without the spiritual potency, without the actual preaching of spiritual knowledge. Now Jesus Christ, see, Christianity is the original form. So Jesus Christ was a sannyasi, and he was giving spiritual knowledge, of course, at a very basic level. But in time, that knowledge was lost. The knowledge that we're not the body, that we're spirit, soul, it was lost. And what replaced it is simply this stereotyped idea of a church institution that is there for social purposes. And so this, you see, this conception actually spelled the end of Christianity as a religious force. And so gradually that then became just nationalism. First there were the national churches that was started by this Martin Luther, and it spread everywhere, and then finally they decided, anyway, who needs this church anyway? It's useless. Now we have a nation. You see, the national church gave rise to the concept of nation, and then they kicked out the church altogether, and they were just left with nation. And the nation became the religion, the saluting the flag and the singing of the national hymn, and all these accompanying national duties and national, we are Swedes, therefore this is holy to us. These ideas are, these conceptions are our holy dharma. And so this is the result of so-called religion without preaching. Religion, in other words, religion without philosophy, without real philosophy. Of course, in Christianity there's preaching. Even in nationalism there's preaching. But it's just preaching the bodily conception. You've heard of Mayavada. Well, this is something else. It's called Dehatmavada. Dehatmavada means the idea that the Atma is the Deha. Deha means the body. So it's just the philosophy of I am this body. So I was recently having an exchange of letters with one Catholic priest who is very interested in Krishna consciousness, but still is very fixed in the Catholic conception. So he was arguing that in countries like Poland, which is a very strong Catholic country, that Catholicism is the root religion. This is the term he used, the root religion. So he meant to say by this that actually the people, even if they become devotees, they're actually Catholics. So therefore ISKCON should respect that and should provide some education so that they will become realized Catholics. They'll become actually very good Catholics. And then he was saying, so to these people who are already very religious Catholics, we shouldn't really preach Krishna consciousness, our doctrine, our philosophy, our theology, but rather we should just preach morality, moral principles. We should get them to stop eating meat and breaking the regulative principles. And then they should chant Jesus' name, and they will be good Catholics. This was his idea. So I replied that, now wait a minute, you say Catholicism is the root religion, but actually the root of our existence, the root of our being is the soul. When we talk of human being, what is the root of the human being? It's the soul, spirit soul. And this Catholic faith all right, we accept it's a faith, but we can also say Swedish nationalism is also a faith. That's just what it is. Churchianity is a faith. Nationalism of Sweden or any other country, it's a faith. But it's this Dehatmavad faith. This faith that I am the body. That's the faith. And that's also there in Catholicism, the Catholic Church. This is their faith, that I am the body. And they have no philosophy by which to distinguish body from soul. So all they do, and they preach, they preach too, but they preach you are this body. The church, the priest in the church, when he's giving his sermon, he's saying things like, you believe in Jesus, and your disease will be cured, or your family life will become nice, or on and on and on. So many appeals to the bodily conception of life. And it's known in war, whenever there's war, then these priests, they fire the people up for going off to war. Fight for your country. This is all bodily conception. So I pointed this out to him, that your Catholic faith has no philosophy by which to distinguish body from soul. And since the soul is the root of our being, how can you say Catholicism is a root religion? It's not. This is just Dehatmavada. This is just bodily conception of life. So actually, you see, this is what preaching means. Preaching means to go out and to challenge. If you want to talk about real Christianity, this is what Jesus Christ did. Therefore, they hung him on the cross, because he went out and he challenged this bodily conception. Of course, actually, we can thank Jesus Christ and his preaching, because by the establishment of this idea, it's a very vague idea, but there is some idea that we're not the body. It's hovering around somewhere in the background. People can say they've heard it, they've read it somewhere in the Bible. Although the church has no means to actually make it real for people. This is the problem. But anyway, the conception has entered into the consciousness somewhere in the back of people's minds. So therefore now devotees can go out and preach, you're not the body, and people are not, at least they're not utterly shocked by it, as they were in those days. That's why they put Christ on the cross. Because it was so shocking for them. What? That you're not the body, your spirit, soul, that God is a person, God is the Father, and we are his sons. These were the sources of controversy. This is why the Pharisees, the Jewish priests, they condemned Jesus, because they thought this is not our religion, what he's preaching. Our religion says, no, we are the body. You're born, this is what Prabhupada said, the conception of this materialistic religion is that because I was born a Hindu, therefore I'm a Hindu. Because I was born a Christian, therefore I'm a Christian. And Prabhupada said this is animalism. This is neither religion, nor human life, nor philosophy. It's just animalism. To think I am a Christian because I was born in a Christian family. Prabhupada said he's an animal. So that's what they were thinking on Jesus Christ. Right? We're all Jewish people because we were born as Jews. Who are you to say we're not this body? What is that? What does that have to do? They became very upset. And that that you're a son of God and we're sons of God can have no son. God's not a person. Put him on the cross. So by Jesus' sacrifice, these ideas are somewhere. Now there's somewhere in the back of people's minds. So devotees can go forth and preach these things. And people will hear now with a little interest because devotees are actually supplying the scientific information, scientific philosophy. So, yes, preaching gives life to the devotee. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said. The one who has life, he can preach. Conversely, if you have no life, go out and preach and get life. And in this way overcome this materialistic, demoniac conditioning of dualism which infects our consciousness. Are there any questions? Yes?
Well, one question is, there are these monasteries of Christians, even young girls living in the monastery, getting up early, doing like sadhana, praying. Is there some spirituality involved, or what is the force that is involved?
Well, people to go to work also get up early. You know, in India, especially, people rise very early. Actually, for someone in Indian culture, for someone to sleep beyond the sunrise is, that means this person he must be sick, they think. He must be ill. Because nobody does that. Everybody gets up. The rickshaw wallahs, they're up before sunrise. They have to make money. We have to go to work. And when they get up early, then they turn on the radio. And on the radio, at this time, the Indian... What does that mean? The priests and nuns in the monasteries are doing this for Sanskrit? Yes, they are. How can you say that? Because they're not following the regular principles. You want to say they are following the regular principles? They're not. So that means it's an occupation. So it used to be very much so in European history that young people, men and women, there was a certain period of history after Christianity expanded. It expanded on, I would say, largely on the basis of real enthusiasm. But after a while it became a profession. And so being a priest or a nun was also a kind of profession. If you, especially parents, if they had a son or daughter they didn't know what to do with, then they would just send them to the monastery or the nunnery. Just go and join the religious order. And so they would join the religious order and they would work in there, work tilling the fields and growing the grapes for the wine. And just a job they had. Of course, they had to follow their schedule. But, this is how beer was invented, because they couldn't actually follow the fast days. They had these fast days, so these monks developed beer so that they could, because they weren't supposed to eat, but if they drank beer, then that would fill their belly. They would feel very strong. And they would also be intoxicated, and that was good. So when there is no taste for spiritual life, just like the rickshaw wall is getting up in the morning, turning on the radio. They're turning on the radio not actually to hear the bhajans. They want to hear the news report that comes next, and then the cinema songs that will come after that. And while their bhajans are playing, they're smoking their bidis and they're drinking their tea, their chai. So this is just a phase of materialism. So similarly, in these monasteries, there's no taste, no higher taste. There's perhaps the appearance of some religious piety, but there's no spiritual taste involved. What are they? I was actually, when I was on Sankirtan many years ago, we used to stay sometimes at these places because they would have so many rooms, because there's not many. They have these old big monasteries, and for 300 monks, and there's only 10 in there. So there's always a room available, so we used to stay there. And I met one young man who was studying. He was enrolled in this school for priests. And so he came, he wanted to talk and ask, well, what are you doing? What is your practice? And I was explaining to him. And then he was saying, I just can't understand. He said, 700 years ago, we were doing the same things you were doing. We were dressing simply and chanting and now, here in this monastery, we're living a very good life. We're playing guitar and singing songs. And I was just saying, I just made the comment. I said, well, yes, I said, this is spiritual life. This way of Krishna consciousness, it is spiritual life. It is universal. So previously, when the church was more spiritual, they were doing these same things, rising early and chanting, holding worship, like Mangalarti and so on. This is standard spiritual life. And he just shook his head and said, for me, spiritual life means to eat a nice thick steak and take a hot bath. So they think this way because they have no taste. They do, the taste for spiritual life is just not there. They have no idea what it is. And that's what they think. Spiritual life is just another form of sense gratification. So real spiritual life can only take place on the basis of real philosophy, just distinguishing between body and soul. Spiritual life is the realization of that. Any other questions? Yes?
Last one about the Jews, because I was in contact with some Judaistic professors, and then he explained that there were polytheism was spread all around, and then at one point in different places people were appearing who believed there is one God, and they began to assemble together with families, and from this the Jewish nation appeared in this way. So is it like that they were inspired from the moon?
Why are you worried about this? Some old stories from the desert. What does it have to do now? Well, we should just be concerned with what's now. What is the Jewish religion now? Damodar Swami, this comes from a Jewish family, told me when he was thinking of joining, then his family, because his family was so irreligious, they had no idea what to say to him about anything. He's become interested in Krishna consciousness. So then they brought in his uncle. There was one uncle who was supposed to be authority on the Jewish scriptures. And the uncle came and sat down and said, I want to sit down, I want to talk with you, serious talk, about our religion, the Jewish religion. Damodar Swami said, he started off the talk by saying, Judaism, yes, God, no. And then he explained how Judaism is a religion that has no room for God. There's no need for God. The Jewish religion is a religion of the people. You see, this tribe, this caste, Jewish people. It's the same thing. You're born into a Jewish family. Therefore, if you have a Jewish mother, then you're a Jew, and therefore you have so many racial duties or family duties that you must fulfill. That's all it is. And he was preaching very heavy to Damodar Maharaj that this idea that you have to go and learn about God in the Hare Krishna movement, it wasn't so much the Hare Krishna movement he was disturbed with. He said, you have to go find out about God. What is God? Has nothing to do with Judaism. So this is the state of affairs today. There may be some old stories in the desert about sheep herders who started to think about one God that's 3,000 years ago. So what? Now all they're thinking about is the body. They even talk about a Jewish soul. I know a devotee who grew up in Israel. He was telling me about this. He was saying, this is the Jewish religion. They believe there's a special Jewish soul. This is Dehatmavada. This is the bodily concept. Yes?
I heard that Srila Prabhupada said that we should not preach to Christians with truth, and how we should do this because they are sometimes quite fanatical and it's very trying to convince they quote some quotes.
Well, yes, some Christians are very fanatical, but Prabhupada did have an idea of a common purpose between Christianity and our movement, beginning on the basis of accepting that God is great. So Srila Prabhupada said that the Bible teaches this, that God is great, and Christian faith is coming to this level. God is great. And then Srila Prabhupada explained that the Bhagavad Gita teaches how God is great. So actually there's no difference. It's simply that Bhagavad Gita is more advanced. Indeed, Prabhupada said Bhagavad Gita has nothing to do with Christian religion or Hindu religion, because it is the religion of the soul, eternal soul's relationship with the eternal personality of Godhead. So Bhagavad Gita is actually not sectarian. But we can begin agreeing with the Christians on the point of God is great. Yes. Just like this Catholic priest, he was speaking of his, what he called his faith vision. In other words, his own faith that he has within himself. And so I was commenting that, yes, faith vision is good for this. That we accept that God is great. We can all have faith that God is great. But if you want to know how God is great, then you have to come to the point of knowledge, which is presented in Bhagavad Gita. So faith without this philosophy, it's nice, but it's not enough to save us from degradation. Just like Poland is a very, very strong Catholic country. Everyone you meet there, they will say, I am Catholic. Even the young people. Last time I was there, I was on the radio, so there was a young lady who was the radio announcer. And she seemed to be very up-to-date, modern young girl, but still she said, I am Catholic. So this is Poland. Everybody identifies with that religion. And they all have their particular faith vision, why I'm a Catholic, what I believe in, what I think God is. And so it's supposed to be a very strict, very conservative religious country. And yet in that country there's so many women having abortions. Now this is against the tenets of the Catholic Church. So there's so many women, there's more than 30%, it says, more than 30%, almost half are having abortions. And yet 90% will say, I am Catholic. And they all know that the Pope says you should not have abortions. So why are they having abortions? Because of not having any philosophy. Because of not knowing what is the soul. Not knowing the law of karma. Not knowing how the soul enters the womb at the moment of conception. And then if that child is that embryo within the womb is aborted, then that's murder. But they don't understand that because they're just in the bodily conception. They're just thinking, I am this body. And this embryo within my womb, this is also my body. This is what they're thinking. So this is ignorance. It's the result of it. They have faith. They all have faith. 90% are saying, I am Catholic. I believe in God. So faith is there, but there's no philosophy. And because there's no philosophy, therefore they're so terribly victimized by the Kali Yuga. I'm sure that these, you see in Poland that people are actually, they're innocent. They're gentle people by nature. And I'm sure if they could understand what terrible sins they're committing, they would be shocked and they would want to stop it. But because they're blinded by ignorance, they just don't know any better. Therefore, so many abortions, and of course the meat eating and the intoxication, all these things. But the church is not philosophically equipped to stop any of this. So this faith is not enough. Just to have a faith vision that God is great. God is great. Yes, God is so great and God understands me, and if I have to have an abortion, He'll forgive me. So a fanatic is one, when you say fanatical Christian, that's a Christian who does not want to come to the point of philosophy. Either he's a fanatic or he's a fool. So then that faith is, then that's not really faith. It's just an attachment. We can accept it, as Rupa Goswami says, adaushvara, faith is the first step. Adaushvara tata sadhusanga, it is faith when it leads to sadhusanga. And it is sadhusanga, you're taking sadhusanga when then you engage in bhajana kriya. That means taking initiation from spiritual master, following the Regata principles, following sadhana bhakti. And it is bhajana kriya that's being done properly when it comes to anartha nivriti, when you overcome all sinful propensities in the heart. And it is anartha nivriti when nishta is seen, when you come to the unshakable position in spiritual life. And on and on. And finally it comes to prema bhakti, pure love of God. So that which we can accept to be faith is that which leads to sadhusanga, association with devotees. So when a Christian denounces the devotees and says, you're going to hell, and warns people, don't associate with them, and he doesn't have any faith. He's a demon. So, we are preachers, we are madhyamadikaris. But what does that mean? That means four things. That we worship the Lord, that we make friends with devotees, that we show mercy to the innocent. So faithful Christians who can associate with devotees to learn more, we can count them among the innocent. And the fourth thing is what? We avoid the demons. So it's not actually that we don't preach to Christians. It's that we avoid the demons. That's really what it is. You can preach to a Christian who actually has faith. But a demon you should just avoid. Yes?
Guru Maharaj, can actually somebody stay whole life in ISKCON if he has not his preaching mood?
No. Not possible. Because ISKCON is a preaching movement. It doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, we should always be eager. This is the point. I mean, one is who is a healthy devotee, who is healthy in his Krishna consciousness, should welcome the opportunity to preach. Maybe we may have a service which does not keep us on the front line of preaching. We may not be book distributors. We may not be the devotee who's giving the lecture in the morning, or like Mukunda Prabhu going out and doing school programs. We may have a service which is more supportive, supportive type services, like if you're working in the kitchen or also working in the restaurant. This is supportive to the preaching. But it is also it's just like, I often give this example of army. You know, the army has many departments. Now what is an army's business? To fight war, to win war. And so there are soldiers who are on the front lines. They have the guns, they're directly fighting the enemy. But in order for them to win, they require so much backup, so much support. So there's so many other soldiers who are driving the trucks and loading the ammunition and doing the communications and the intelligence and so many other things. And if they're not there, there's no possibility of winning the war. We may have big heroes on the front line, but if no one is bringing them the bullets, what will they do? Shout and scream and attack with the back part of their guns. Beat the enemy on the end. They will all be killed. And that was just like the Japanese in the Second World War. They were very brave, but when their support broke down, then they, on these islands in the Pacific, the Americans set up their machine guns, and the Japanese, with no bullets, they would have what they call banzai charge. They would take out their swords and go, banzai! Long live the emperor. They would run down the hill, and the Americans would just... And they died very bravely. And they lost the war. So that is useless. So you must have support. So this Krishna consciousness movement, ISKCON, is set up in that way. It is an institution, a complete institution dedicated to preaching. So, because it is a preaching movement, to remain within this movement, we must be preachers. We must have the preaching spirit. And even though we're in another department, not on the front line, if we're healthy in Krishna consciousness, then we should always welcome the opportunity to preach. If you have that desire in your heart, I want to preach, but I have to do this service, then Krishna will arrange for you that you'll be able to preach. You'll meet somebody who will ask you serious questions about Krishna consciousness. And you'll be able to also taste the nectar. But if we're not healthy, then we avoid it. You see, one who is not in healthy Krishna consciousness, at the end of the day, he's cleaning and someone comes in. It's late. Someone comes in and there's no devotees around and this person has questions. And the cleaner, he sees, oh, this person has questions, so he turns his back. Cleans more intently, and that person's going, excuse me, I have a few questions. I'm sorry, we're closed. Come back tomorrow. So this is not healthy Krishna consciousness. Actually, you know, there's one hotel chain of hotels around the world. I forgot the name of it. But it is a very, very successful international hotel concern. And they have a rule for all of their employees, even the ones who are just changing the light bulbs. Their rule is that while you're doing your job, if a customer comes to you and asks you a question, you have to stop what you're doing and talk to that person. You may be up on the ladder changing the light bulb, but if a customer comes out and says, excuse me, I'm lost, can you tell me where the restaurant is? Or, you know, some other, can you tell me how to make a phone call, international phone call, or how to send a telex or whatever? Then that person, he has to come down from his ladder, and even he doesn't know the answer to the question, he has to walk with that customer to the place where that customer can get the answer and make sure the customer is being served. And then only he can go back to his job. If he doesn't do that, if he stays on his ladder and says, I don't know, lady, go down to the front desk and ask there. If he does it, he's immediately fired. As soon as that comes to the attention of the management, they say, you cannot work here anymore. That's their rule for every employee. And they get trained in this. And so this is a rule we should have also. That we may have whatever service we may have. It may not be frontline preaching, but we should always be eager and willing to preach. Because this is what has made that hotel chain so successful. Because the people, they want to room in such hotel because they find that the employees are so personal. You see, immediately attentive to their needs. So you see, these are karmis, but they understand that this is what convinces people, is this personalism. This is what convinces people. This is what makes loyal followers. This is what makes a successful hotel chain. It's personalism. So in Krishna consciousness movement, so many of us are coming out of a frustrated, a background of frustration with mundane personalism, mundane personal interaction. And so we're all very intellectual and very cold and analytical and mistrusting. And this is a common symptom I see, unfortunately, among the devotees. The devotees are still on the jnana platform, still trying to understand the absolute truth. Avoid Maya. And so they're not very open, unfortunately, to giving the mercy to the conditioned souls. But we have to overcome this. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Dasotra Swami ki jai.